Okay, good morning again, including those who are watching on the replay. So we're going to do two things today. We're going to be talking about sampling, and we're going to be talking about assignment 2, about the lit review. So let's bring up let me share my screen and bring up the lit review assignment. Hope I still have it open. Right. So the lit review assignment has two components. There is constructing a literature matrix we're going to go through quickly right now. And there's also writing an analytical annotated bibliography. In fact, this is spelled wrong. Bibliography. Mistake. Wow, I had biography instead of, yeah, bibliography. I'll see it spelled right here. Let's see it. Right, so this is the assignment, and an annotated bibliography is a summary of the paper. You have some links to read about it, but I'm just going to show quickly how to do a review matrix. So we're going to go to Excel. All right, so you're seeing my screen. Okay, so let's say we were doing a study that was looking at the use of fitness wearables, among a particular group of persons. So whether we wanted to look at it for elderly persons or for young females, because that way females tend to be fit, including young females. Whatever we wanted to do, we would need to do a literature review to find out what is known about this topic. So as we were looking, I'm giving you a context. We're going to do a summary of each paper that we'll be using in the paper, using this particular spreadsheet. So as we do that, we are going to do a number of things. So this particular paper that I found, all the way sometimes letting people into the class. So in this particular paper, which I found on Google Scholar, let me go back to Google Scholar, I had done a search. This is one of my areas of interest. So, if I just put in, if I had just put in, I don't even know where I found this exactly, but activity. So I was actually looking, particularly for a reason. I was looking at articles that looked at fitness using UTAUT model, because let's say in my research, I'm about to explain what UTAUT is. I wanted to look at coming up with an empirical study that literally use UTAUT as part of it. So let me just take a break. So when I went through more than one page, I went from next page and I eventually found that particular article, doesn't matter how at this point. So as I was looking, I found an article that we're going to spend time looking at how to summarize quickly. But as part of the background, I wanted to show you about UTAUT. So there are people who do research, either has frameworks or they don't, depending on how they did the study. So UTAUT, or UTAUT 2, stands for Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology. And it's basically a model used in a research study to see if number of variables actually are related to each other. So I'm just going to bring up any one of these so we can see it, and hopefully bring it up so we can see it big. So here it is. Here's UTAUT. So UTAUT is a model. So let's back up now. That is used anytime somebody wants to know about the relationship between the intention to use a technology and what are the factors of a person that tend to be related to whether somebody intends to use it. So for example, do I intend to use a fitness wearable, as in a smartwatch? Do I intend to use, let's say my teacher came up with a game for a class. How many of the class is going to use that game? If it's free, it's going to be based on a number of factors. And whether you intend to use it is obviously related to whether you actually use it. So this is saying that your intention to use a new technology is related directly to whether you use it. It's affected by your age, gender, and experience of using that particular technology. But here are other things in this advanced model of UTAUT. Performance expectancy means, does the user expect the thing to work? No, obviously, if you think it will work, you're more likely to use it. The effort expectancy is, how much effort you expect it takes to use it. So generally, you would expect that somebody who thinks it's easier to use is going to be more likely to use it. Social influence, who people around you believe. So I brought up the example of a fitness app. Let's say you had a disease like heart disease or diabetes. There is evidence that shows that physical activity will help the outcome of those kind of people. There are other diseases, so just keep those two at the moment. So if your physician tells you that, boy, you need to work out, you might be now inclined, especially if the smartphone is free, to use it because your doctor recommended that you exercise, and he says there is studies that show that smartwatches work. So why don't you? Here's a free smartwatch. So let's go to facility conditions. Facility conditions is everything from, do you have access to the device? Maybe if it uses internet access, do you need internet access? So these are going to hamper whether somebody uses it and whether you get pleasure from using the thing, the price, and is it a habit. So obviously all of these could affect a person's intention to use a technology. Is everybody following me? So this is called a theoretical framework. And what people do in a study is you could have a research question like, what are the factors that influence intention to use? And then whatever technology in your study. If your study was an educational study, it could be that you were wanting to find how, I just saw a study on this, Google Classroom, or it could be Moodle. What are the factors that influence students' use of Moodle or YouTube or whatever else as part of their education, or MOOCs, which is actually another educational thing. And then you could do a research to do a questionnaire and have questions that fit all of these in order to answer that research question. Everybody following where I'm going with this so far? So this is a quick introduction to the UTaught model. So if you now understand what the UTaught model is, I am now saying, here we have the assignment. So the part that is the most challenging here is that I found this article, I copied, just to remind you, let's copy it again. Let's say I just had this. Let's see what would be enough to find it. There should be enough to find it. I don't want to put the whole thing out, copy. So if I go back to Google Scholar, just open a new tab, right, so if I in Google Scholar put in this, I should find the article. Right, so you already know how to get there it is, right there. So all I did was I took that and I literally put it right here in my first tab, which was about APA reference. And it was, and it was in 2021. So your publication is 2021. And I just need to see how much number of citations. I've not forgotten, only one was published last year, one citation so far. So I'm going to put in one here. And then what is the theoretical model? Let's just make sure I'm right about it. So let's open it up. I think it was actually in the title. No, it's not in the title. So yeah, in fact, it is the second version. So see it here, building on the second version of the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. So that's UTaught 2. And this one thankfully has the whole paper, so we can actually find anything we want about it. So I'm actually doing this live. I have not read this paper before. So I'm going to save this and upload this to the Moodle site, so you can look at this at your leisure if you feel like. So this is UTaught 2. And so what is the setting? So let's look at the paper. So this tells us that 839 US residents. So that's where it is. It's US. And so this is the setting. I think that's all you need in setting. So under this, setting and participant or context. No, so this is the participants, it's US residents, and sometimes some papers won't be about setting and participants. So for example, if you read a systematic review, maybe we could spend a few seconds on that right now, it would be the context. So which usually is but I'll get to that in a second. And then what's the aim of this project? This project tells us the aim right here. The study aims to examine whether these 7 determinants of that are associated with the intention to use and the behavioral intentions of being physical active. In fact, it's very long, as well as whether there's moderating effects of education, motivation on, yeah. So they want to find out, basically, it's very long. Basically, they want to find out what factors affect whether people intend to use an app or actually use the app. That's what it's basically all about. And it's from 833 residents. And I'm just going to be quick. So I'm going to put this in quotes, so I'm not paraphrasing it. So that's a long aim right there. And what are the methods? So the methods is they're basically doing a web-based survey. Yeah, so it's a web-based survey for people who have used at least one fitness app. That's the methods. Yeah, I mean, we could actually put in, they actually have the methods as well as the analysis. So we could put this as well. So let's put I'm in the wrong section. This is here. So methods. More people just joining the class late. So methods for this. No. All right, that's that. I mean, we could put more in our code. Look here, this is actually a cross-sectional study, because that's what it is. If you remember, this is obviously, that's what they did. We know it's adults because we said that before, who are the participants. So the methods, usually there are 3 parts of methods that are really important. The research design here, it's a cross-sectional design. What is the, so 3 parts, research design, cross-sectional. Second part is who are the participants, US adults, which was there before, or US residents, US residents using our web, and the instrument is a web-based survey. And then you could put, this was performed. That's the way of data analysis. That actually was performed. That's the entire methods. So we are going on to the results and findings. So if we go back to the paper, I've now lost my paper. I think it's over here. No, the kid's over here. So here's the results and conclusions. So we act for both and they're there. So they actually tell you really precisely use statistics. So determines, explain 76% of the variance. So this means that it's a pretty good result, that the model actually explains more than 3/4 of whether or not people actually intend to use fitness apps. And then they tell you which ones are important. So if you remember basic statistics, when alpha is less than 0.001, this means that there's a 99 point, what is this now? This is really good. This is a 99.9% chance that habits are correlated to the intention to use it. So, but before we get to each of these, so these are all the ones that are under, once they're under 0.01, it's considered, you kind of have confidence in the result. But does anybody know what type of correlation this is? This one is 0.4. These are moderate correlations. So these 2 are very high, whereas these are low. So beta equal 0.15, beta equal 1.3. These are interesting, but they're not as significant. But anyway, these are the results. So if you want the whole results, I mean, you could copy the whole thing. So it's a lot of the results. All right, at the moment, I'm just going to put we could actually either summarize it or put the whole thing depending on what we want, because essentially these things are already done as part of you to find out what are the results. So either we're going to shorten it or put everything. Now, usually if you're doing it for a paper, you would probably select part of that at the moment. So I'm just saying, what does this really show? It shows, and it's going to be in the conclusion, it shows that the two things that we find that are is habit, whether they expect the thing to work, and whether there are facilitating conditions. All those three are important, as well as price. Those three are the most important, although they also mention effort expectancy. So those 5 variables have an impact on whether people intend to use a fitness app. And so they conclude that you can actually use Utah to look at what drives the use of fitness apps. And so it says it should be designed to increase, the features should be increased, facilitating habit formation. Why? Obviously, because people with habits tend to continue to use it. So then they retarget the things that were found in the study. So all of this needs for us to read it. I'm not going to read it. The next part here says future research. So there's a part of the assessment that says what is future research. They actually say it right here. So I'm just going to copy it and put it in this. So future research. Let's come back to this. So they actually have future research. I'm just going to copy it straight. Full stop. And in this summary, they don't have anything for, well, truthfully. So this is the practical. So this part is actually practice. So all of this is really practical implications. So if you look at it, this is how smartphones should be designed. So all of this is, that's why I'm going to put this, copy, I'm thinking about it. This is what I'm putting on the implications for practice. Because they're saying when you're coming up with a smartphone, you need to be thinking about these things. But here is the conclusion relating to the academic part. So the academic part really is this. So I would say that in a sense, you can go back to, even this is actually part of the yeah, I don't know what of this. The conclusion, this is how I see the conclusion. There's many ways to put it. So conclusion, admit, conclusion. And I would probably put this as part of my conclusion, even though they don't have it. It depends on how you see it. So the point is, so there are different ways to fashion what is the conclusion of the study. But basically, you can see from the study that Utah predicts the use of fitness apps. It's as much as 76%. You could actually say more of that. If I go back to here, have I actually done all of this? Yeah, so I've basically said something about each part of the study. I'm going to press save. And I'm going to go quickly to, how much time is passing? Yes, time passing. I'm going to go quickly to a study using a systematic review. Activity. Let's see. What do we call this again? No, I want to, what is this thing called? Wearables. That's what I want. So, yeah, so this is one. So we actually have this. So this would be another one. Copy here. So given my study, I could use this because that's actually looking at wearables. And that's what we're looking at right now. And let's hope this paper actually opens. Don't know if it's going to open. But if you want to see the abstract, it'll be fine for us right now. Oh, the whole paper is there. So, but look at this study. Like all systematic reviews, the methods is that they're going to search a number of online databases in order to find out about something. So they basically want to find out whether wearables work. That's what they really want to find out there. In fact, what's the conclusion? It shows that there's a small to moderate effect of physical activity. Sorry, this shows that there's a small to moderate effect of using wearables, it actually increases your physical activity, but it's only small to moderate. So they say wearables are likely to bring you opportunities in delivering tailored intervention to increase physical activity. That's the result. But what I want to talk right now is about what in the world is the context. So the context here is related to the background. So basically, they tell us that there are new opportunities, and they are looking at a meta-analysis. Basically, it's across databases. So I would say my context here, and I could, it's not, this is the aim, you know. So the aim is right here. The aim is that it is to review the evidence. But the context of the paper is this. The context of the paper, of this paper is, given that the paper examines studies globally which is the activity interventions using wearables. But that's really the context, because it's not, their study was just to combine all the studies. So when people, we don't have time right now to go through the whole thing. The rest of it is just basically like we did before. Here is the aim. The aim of the study is right here. It is to summarize. This is the aim of the study. So we could put this in. The aim of the study here. I'm kind of confused where I'm in this here. Study I guess I actually did this to summarize. Somebody had a question? Is to, yeah. Right. So I will, let me see, what is this? You need to do 3 of them. So each person has to do 3, and each person in the group would do other 3 or more. Right. So hopefully that's enough for you to get a sense of that. So I'm going to move on now. So I'll finish with, you have 3 examples. So I showed 2 with a theoretical model using UTaught. You may actually have another model. So by the way, if your research has no model, you put not applicable. 3, it's in the assignment. I'm not gonna, I don't spend time in the middle of a class on assignments when it's laid out in the assignment. So guys, sorry. I don't understand students in Jamaica. The longer I live, and I'm no longer so young. It's like you guys are, what you call it, like you're in high school, or like non-adults. Certain things, it's up to you to be like an adult and find out. Anyway, back to the story. I need to go to the slideshow, and here we are. Yes, so from the beginning, let's start. So today we are looking at the second half of the class is looking at sampling techniques. So we already know that the lit review that you do helps you coming up with the concept paper and coming up with a lit review chapter, which you're hopefully working on by now, which leads to you planning your research. And so as part of planning research, you have to do sampling, which is what we're talking about today. And after you come up with all the methods, then you actually collect the data. Then you do some analysis of that data, you discuss it, and you conclude. Let's not spend time because we're going to be out of time very soon. So let me emphasize this, because last night people were not listening. The population in research is not always the same as the population of the country you're living in. So we all know that most countries have censuses, including Jamaica, America, many other countries. But if your research is children from middle-class families, and I made a comment last night, given what's happening across the world, the middle class, I'm sure it's shrinking, even though I don't have the data because of the stresses of COVID and economic, if your research is on children from middle class families, you either know the size of that list, if that is somehow captured in the census, or you don't know that list. But you need in any research project, if it's of people or animals, to know the focus of your research. Yes, that's going to be important later. And either you know the size of your population or you don't. And it depends. The only way you know the size if it's somebody before you had got the size. Otherwise, you could actually do a research project to find out things like that. So there's a difference between the actual population and then those who are accessible. There are some projects where most of the population is inaccessible. That is not usually in computing, except if you're trying to do research on hackers. I can tell you hackers basically are not accessible at all. So moving on from that. So because it is too expensive to take a full census, typically people do a subset. Those are called samples. So sampling is the process of selecting from the large group. So there are two types of sampling, probability or non-probability. So probability sampling is doing sampling such that each member of the population has equal chance of being selected, using statistical procedures to make inferences. Non-probability sampling is where you actually don't know the chance. You don't know whether each population of the sample is equally. In fact, it is most likely that they're not being selected in an equal fashion. And so sometimes people use statistical inferences, but if you do, you will have no confidence in them. So of probability sampling and non-probability sampling, which one sounds to you like the one that you would have more confidence in as a researcher using quantitative methods? I'm asking a question. Don't all speak at once. I have 56 people here. Can somebody speak up? Nobody has a guess as to whether probability or non-probability sampling sounds better to them? Not even in the chat.
Probability, miss.
Why is teach, please? Why does probability sound better to you? Explain. As in, you're right. Why?
Because based on the definition, it seems like it's more precise, so you know that you're going to get an answer that probably makes sense. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, what it is that probability sampling will get you data about the sample that is likely to represent the population. Remember, it's a subset. Yeah. So everybody wants a sample to represent the population. Remember, the population is not necessarily. So let's say we're doing a research study at Jamaican universities, and we decide to only use NCU and UTech as part of our study, right? Which we can. And then we still decide that of NCU and UTech, we use 10% of the student body. In order for it to be probability sampling, we would actually need to find some way to make everybody have an equal chance. Whereas non-probability, we could just, but we soon come to it. So I want to go to the biggest error that students make in major project, both in write-up as presentation. So there are at least 4 types of probability sampling techniques, and there are at least 4 types of non-probability sampling techniques. So let's go to this one first. Convenience sampling is the one that students tend to use in major project if for a lot of that, or quota sampling. In fact, could be all of them, but convenience sampling tend to be the one that's most used if they don't have access to a list. But it is, let's say we wanted to find 100 UTech students. If we go, or 100 students studying statistics at UTech this semester, we could send out some web forms, and the first 100 students who are registered for statistics, who answer the survey, that's it, convenience sample. as opposed to, let's go to simple random sample. Simple random sampling is, you can do it one of two ways. You can either do it manually or with a computer. Manually means like you put something in a box, like a list of everybody who's in this that you take this semester, and select from the box. Let's say you wanted 10 people. The first 10 is still random because everybody has an equal chance of being picked from the box. Or you could use a computer generator, and that's also simple random sampling. That's very different than say, oh, we just send something by WhatsApp and the first people who respond, that is called convenient sampling. Not true? So does everybody understand the difference between, sorry, literally people often do convenient sampling and then call it random sampling. So by the way, you can either call this simple random sampling or just random sampling for short. But I don't know why students keep doing convenient sampling and then they haven't come to my class. So I suggest in every class where I teach this, I suggest again now that you find a piece of paper and pencil or pen and write this down. Random sampling is a probability sampling technique, and talk about it. And convenient sampling is, and you talk about it. And why do I suggest that you write it down? Because research shows that things that you write, you remember better than things that you put on a digital platform. That's even more than when you just watch it. Sorry, just giving you some research-based advice. Anyway, so moving on. So let's talk about each of these probability sampling techniques in turn. So we already talked about this. This is fairly simple. So systematics sampling is fairly simple. It's where the populations are arranged in some order. So you actually have a list of everybody. So all of the sampling techniques, that is probability, you actually have to have a list of everybody in the population or you cannot do it. So if you don't have a list, you can't do it. Because in order to select from this, if you don't know who's in the population, how can you select randomly? The only way you can do systematic sampling is you have a list of everybody in the population. This could be persons who are programmers, it could be anything. So you have that list, and then you say, I start somewhere. So it could be start number 7th on the list, and then you say every 5th person, I'm going to choose until I get the sample size I want. That's all systematic sampling. It's similar to random sampling, but using a particular technique. Certified sampling is a little bit more sophisticated. It's where you use subgroups that you are attempting to find you're trying to have the subgroups represent the entire population. So let's take UTech. You may have noticed when you were here last that the engineering department has a lot more males than females, which is unlike most university students across Jamaica. So at UTech, at UE, it's a whole lot more females than males. I'm not sure what the proportion is at UTech. But in engineering, it's almost 9-to-1 for the students. So let's just take it as if it's 9-to-1. So let's say that for every 10 students, 9 are male and 1 is female. Let's say we were doing a sample size of 300. How many females would we need if you want it to be in proportion to the student numbers? Let me say that again. 90% of the students are males, and we decided to take a sample size of 300. How many female students would we need in our sample? Anybody?
30?
Yes, exactly. So 270 men and 30 female. So similarly, let's say we're doing interviews of the staff in the Faculty of Engineering. So there are a little bit more females. So let's say it was actually 7 males to 3 females. And we wanted to interview 10 of the Faculty of Engineering staff. How many men do we need of the 10? How many need to be men and how much need to be female? This is obviously a simple question.
7 men, 3 female.
Exactly. So, and just to let us all know, in most populations, including Jamaica, male, female tends to be 50-50, almost exactly like 50.0001. You know, I think it's usually a little bit more female. You would have to look it up. I'm not sure if that's the right number. So usually when you're doing population, it is 50-50, but in different populations, it could be different. like example, like in Jamaica, most universities have much more females than males. That's not everywhere in the world. Although I think across the world, the female numbers definitely are going up. It depends on where you are in the world. So anyway, so moving on. The next type is cluster sampling. I'm not going to spend much time on it here. If you're going to do this in your research, you need to read up more about it. But basically, it's a situation where it's doing it across regions. So let's take in Jamaica, you might decide to do in both urban and rural regions. And then you might want to say, I want certain communities in each of those regions. And then you say how many clusters. So the clusters are maybe our parishes, and then you say how many subclusters you have, and then you decide to randomly select between the regions. So I won't worry about that because most of you won't be doing that in your projects. We're doing simple projects for major project. I'm preparing for major project. This is also a simple introduction. So we mentioned earlier, there are 4 types of non-probability sampling techniques. So let's go in order of what's on the screen. So we have purposive sampling. Purposive sampling is where you select the members based on some characteristic. Usually it's because they know a lot about what you're asking. So like today on TV, I saw an eminent sociologist talking about women who are involved in gangs. And the man actually said, this is based on research, you know, that 1 in 10 murders that happen among gangs are by women. I had no idea. It's like, whoa. But the point is, he actually did that research and went in as a sociologist into gangs and interviewed them. I would think that while going into a gang, you would need to interview dons that are willing to be interviewed and other people who are, you know, who really know what's going on. Not everybody in the gang and not everybody in the community who are not in the gangs would be equally knowledgeable what's happening with the gangs. Would you guys agree? So there are projects like that. We're not sociologists, but there are, let's say you're doing a study looking at a software development company and you want to find out, you know, something about culture. You would probably use department heads and people who have been there for longer. You want to select people who are going to be able to answer your research more fully, research questions and your questionnaires or your interviews more fully. So sometimes the people are selected based on are they likely to have the information that you want to know. Convenience sampling, where they said whoever is willing to answer the question. Snowball sampling is usually when people are going to be unlikely to participate. That includes prisoners, you know, persons who are criminals but not yet identified. I don't even know if they've been researched. You know, any kind of thing where people are either ashamed or feel like it's a very private matter. What you usually do is you find somebody in a particular population where they're hesitant to share, and you ask that person after the finished interview, do they know anybody else who's willing to do so? And so you do snowball sampling. I'm actually about to be in a study on caregivers of dementia. So my father has dementia. And interestingly, somebody who knows me reached out to me and says, her friend who's doing her PhD was having a hard time finding people who are willing to do this kind of research. Would I do it? So basically I was snowball sampled. Basically, it's just like, I don't even know if she did the thing, but it's basically I'm getting through, whether it was convenience or snowball sampling, I'm not even sure. But that's the idea. And then quota sampling. So if you understood the concept of stratified sampling, then you can understand the concept of quota sampling. Quota sampling is we actually know at least some kind of subgroup that we want to represent. So let's go back to my example of UTech community. So let's say instead now we wanted to go to Cobham. No, let's go to Skit. So does anybody want to guess what is the student population ratio in terms of, I don't know, anything, full-time to part-time or male to female, there's something. Somebody give me some percentage numbers that we can work with right now, just for example for the class. Somebody.
For every 10 full-time students, there are 2 part-time.
And then you want to work that out, you want to say 2 out of 12, and what percentage is that? You're making it very complicated. If I'm going to use yours,
20% out of the 100.
No, that's not 20, not the way you said it. You're saying of every 10, there's 2?
Yes,
I thought you said, oh, I thought you meant it was 10 out of 12. Okay, so you're saying of every 10, there's 2 part-time. Okay, that sounds plausible within skit. I actually think it's more than that right now, but let's just go with your example. So if there are 2 part-time if 20% of the entire skit student population is part-time, yeah, man, that's certainly more new tech, right? Do you know people are even abroad studying in skit right now? Much more than that, but let's work with his example. Then if what we wanted was like 200, if we wanted 200 skit persons in a study, you know, let's say the study was, we wanted to find out people's responses to this class, research methods. So we wanted to, well, we don't have 200 people in research methods. So right now, maybe we have 150 people in research methods. And so let's say we decided to go with a really large number and we went with 100. Let's go with the standard 100. So we wanted 100 people in research methods. Yeah, let's go to CSP. So let's go to CSP, there probably are a lot of people. And let's say in CSP, there's actually over 200, which is definitely plausible. And so let's say they wanted to find out about 200 of the CSP people and ask a questionnaire. How many part-time people would we need to be in that sample size of 200? And how many full-time? It's just
So
20.
it would be, yeah, it would be 40
Right, so right, exactly. So it'd be 40 part-time and 160 full-time, but in quota sampling, instead of taking a list, what you could do is you find the first 40 part-time that's willing to participate in your study, and the first 160 full-time who's willing to participate. That's quota sampling. In stratified sampling, it is based on the list. So selection of that subset is randomly chosen. Do you see the difference? But by the way, you can only do quota sampling if you actually know the proportion of the population. So if you did know the proportion, so let's go to let's go to this now. Let's go to back to here. So now let's go to some reasons why even the best of academics do non-probability sampling techniques, even though we know it is not the best. So let's think of any population online that any of you smart students can tell me that we don't know the sample size of, as in the population size. Anybody, go. Remember, let's say you want to do a study. Tell me a study that you would want to do that you think nobody knows the size of the population. And let's stick to Jamaica. Go now. Do you understand the question? You're going to think of a study, and the studies are going to be about some people online in Jamaica. And I want to say, well, you could give me ones that you know the size. You can either give me ones that you have know the size and one that you don't know the size. Go. I mean, I can give examples, but I want the students to give examples, and then I respond to your suggestions. Don't all speak at once. Or something's in the chat. Let's see what's there. A number of persons who are unregistered residents. How is it an online thing? Well, seriously, I don't understand that. And what is unregistered? I don't even know what that means. I'm not sure what that means. Unregistered in what way? They sound like illegal aliens in the US. I'm not unregistered for what? Moshesh? So I have two comments about that. I'm not sure what that means as a population in general. So,
yes, never mind then.
right. So two things for everybody. When you're doing any research study, your population must be well defined. This seems to be unclear to me. But I was saying, think about people online. Guys, we are online right now. So please tell me some online community and tell me whether you know the size or you don't know the size. Please go. Because you can't tell me you don't know being online. Here we are online in a educational setting. And by the way, we know the size, just to give you a comment. We literally know that there's 61 people plus me in the room. Or actually 59 people plus me in the room right now. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Garcian. Hope I said your name right. The number of WhatsApp users in Jamaica. So guess what? There's a company. What the rename themselves again? Meta. So Meta, which owns Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, I think they are pretty close to knowing the number of WhatsApp users in Jamaica. Not true? I mean, somebody did argue to me yesterday that, it was about adolescents, right? So I think they know why, and they would know because then they literally know where the device is. So the problem there, if you go back to this one, was at the very beginning, we actually had said, with the population, we may not be able to find out that thing. So the truth is that number is known, but what is not known is that we as researchers may be able to not get that from Meta. So if we can't get that information from, is it Meta? Whatever they call themselves, that new company. Sorry, the new name for Facebook, the company.
It's Meta.
It's Meta. Okay, thanks for the.
Metaverse.
It's just weird. Metaverse, sorry. So if you can't get that information on Metaverse, then we would essentially have to do a non-probability sampling. But let's keep it WhatsApp. Does anybody know the amount of WhatsApp adolescent users in Jamaica? As somebody pointed out, even if you, let's say you go to Instagram or Facebook, they have rules that you need to be 13 and above. So then some people just go and put an age that's not the age. So you have some who are under 13 who put that they're 15, and some who are whatever age. So the ages are not necessarily right. So there can be some possibilities of problems. But you can see that there's something that we may want to know. And certainly if you want to know all the social media users in Jamaica across platforms, I don't know if that is easily findable, but you'd have to summarize, you have to sum it across all the platforms. But the point is, there's some things that essentially researchers don't know unless they went and did a study. So if somebody had done a study now and it was published, you could actually find a proper study. You could do a study where one of the goals of the study is to find out what percentage of adolescents are actually using social media. And then if you read up that study, you would know the population size because a previous study actually had looked at that. That would be called a descriptive research. I mean, that descriptive research could actually have other components, but there's actually value in doing that because business people and other people both business and education people could make business decisions and education decisions based on knowing the kind of platforms for sure that adolescents are on. Anyway, so saying all that to say that even though probability sampling is better than probability, sometimes we are quote unquote, the only choice we have is one of these types of non-probability, and it's really a matter of figuring out which one is the best. So we went through this already. And so the key now is to figure out what is the sample size. So obviously it makes sense that the larger the sample size, the likely the project is going to come with a result that is more likely to answer the research question. Remember, the whole goal of all projects is to answer the research study. And if you answer the research question with a sample size that's too small, it's unlikely to be not so good. So Qualitative, there's a rule of thumb where you basically normally want 30 or more, and quantitative, depending on the kind of procedures, you want anything from 30, 100 and more. So we have the rule of thumbs. For a survey, it's a minimum of 100. Usually, there are actually ways to work it out using online calculators to make it more precise. For experiment, it's 50 participants in each group. So in a natural experiment, it would be like the simplest experiment, it could be 15 groups, 15 participants in a experimental group and 15 participants in a control group. And then in these kind of studies, it's a minimum of 30. And so we actually need to think about types of errors. And there are non-random sampling errors and random sampling errors. We don't have enough time today to go into this in depth, but basically, sampling error is a flaw in how you create the research, whereas random sampling error is not something that you do. It is because, let's explain this, it's because if you don't take the entire population, because you're taking a subset, even if you do probability sampling, it is possible that that sample doesn't represent the entire population. And so think about it. If you take a subset of the population, that is why you are not supposed to say that one study proves anything. Why? Because that subset, even though it is likely to represent the population, it may not. So that is why we tend to say when you do several studies and look at them together, then we can start to say, oh, there is moderate evidence or overwhelming evidence that X, Y, and Z is the case. I mean, one study is still useful, but one study alone cannot be proof because there is this thing called random sampling error. The problem though is that it can be worse than that. If you design your research problematically, so it has poor design, you can actually have what is called sampling bias, and you want to do all you can to make sure that does not happen. You know, so for example, if it is, let me give you a regular example. A lot of studies that students in major project do, they tend to ask people in a convenience way, and then they have a lot of people who have high levels of education. In Jamaica, we only have, I'm not sure the percentage right now, maybe 20% of people have some level of tertiary education. And then you have in their study, like maybe 50, 60%. And if what you're trying to do is represent the overall population, that is bias. And so even in your convenience sample, if you're not even doing precisely quota sampling, if it's not like the population, you're going to have sampling error because of how you set up your study. And so the idea is to have eliminate or reduce, not random, and to make the standard error as low as possible. And one way to do that is to increase the sample size. Because if you think about it, once you have more participants in the study, the more likelihood that it is to represent the population. And there's one study that says that a survey beyond 400 is unlikely to be of any more value. Remember, I just gave you a rule of thumb of 100. So generally you don't want beyond 400. Unless there's some good reason, that's the thing. So, and then depending on what's happening with your sampling is whether you're going to be able to generalize from your study. And so you want to know about these terms called validity and reliability. Validity is a concept that your research is correct, and reliability is the concept that you can repeat. No, that's not it. So validity is the concept that your research is accurate. Reliability is if you repeat the study, you get the same result. So all good research has both validity and reliability. And the problem is when people have done studies repeatedly, sometimes they find that the results are not reliable. And so I am very disturbed sometimes I hear people around me saying, oh, that study was done before, so it don't need to be done again. That is not good science. If it's been done before, maybe in the same context 5 times, maybe then we don't need to do it again. But just done it once and doesn't mean that's not necessarily, if the the project is something that is really important, it really might be of value to do the kind of research again, so we can find out if we can have confidence in the results. So sampling is very important, and it's not something just to rush. You need to think through how you should do the sampling. And we'll leave it at that today, because as far as I see, it is 2 minutes to 10. So is there any question? For those who came in very late, we spent almost the first half of the class looking at how to do a lit review matrix. And then we've spent the second half talking about sampling and just really briefly about sampling bias. Yeah, so any questions, students?
No, teach.
Okay, guys. Well, I hope you have a pleasant day. For those who did not know, I live streamed the class on Monday, and then I just on my birthday actually to watch the YouTube video. So hopefully you've all done so by now. Next week, Tuesday, I think is March 1st, and myself and a student have been invited to GIS think tank. I don't know if the date is going to change, and it should be from 9 to 10. So I'm actually beginning to wonder if I'm going to either, it's one or two things, guys. Is either if it's going to go all the way to 10, is either I'm going to have to do the same video thing, or I could ask one of you to share the slideshow while I talk. I'm going to assume that you prefer that I come live.